Previously on Gods of the Tower. Rogue demigods have stolen the key and climbed the tower to reach the god gate. The Princess Rhesus and the demigod No Name race to stop them. Upon entering the tower, Rhesus and No Name came across the main and the first of many challenges of the tower. A maze stretching from the bottom of the tower to the very top with many traps, puzzles and monsters sprinkled in to keep you on your toes. Rhesus led the way through the maze doing the old trick of keeping the left hand on the wall, with the goal of trying to find the stairs to progress to the next level of the tower. However, it wasn't long before the duo met their first real obstacle, and it wasn't an intended part of the tower. It was a small outpost left behind by the bad guys to prevent any hopeful heroes from getting any ideas. The three-armed men quickly grabbed their weapons and were only too happy to clobber what they perceived to be a small girl and her emo friend. Rhesus acted quickly by sending in No Name, who was only too happy to let off thousands of years of steam in the fight. But, yeah. A powerless demigod with no idea how to invoke his power does not fare well against three fully armed foot soldiers, so No Name got pummeled into the ground. Rhesus was not happy, and didn't help the situation by jumping up and down and screaming about how useless and pathetic of a demigod No Name was. He didn't respond since he was kind of occupied by the multiple fists and weapons bashing his face. The issue No Name had was that he couldn't remember how he would fight back since, well, he didn't know his own name. He didn't know if he was a puncher, a spellcaster, or could make a magical weapon appear out of midair. But thankfully for the duo, he was able to find out. One of the men took a swing with his sword. The beat-up No Name in desperation reached out a shadowed hand to block the attack. The arm was cut off and No Name screamed in pain. However, on his knees in agony, he noticed his severed arm on the floor beginning to smoke and morph into something that was rather handy. His severed arm had turned into a blade, and without hesitation, No Name grabbed the blade and thrust it up. The blade pierced the armour of the soldier as if it was cutting through air, killing the man instantly. No Name smiled his disgusting grin while the two other men stepped back in horror in realisation they were facing a demigod. As No Name's severed arm grew back, in the space of that second, both men lay dead with the demon standing above their corpses. He was still grinning at the result of his handiwork being ever so closer to figuring out how his power worked, but he stopped grinning when Rhesus smacked him in the head and scolded him for not figuring out he could turn his severed arm into a sword sooner. No Name tried protesting with the fact he was busy getting beat up while she did nothing but scream at him, but she was busy walking off without him. Before leaving, No Name looked back at one of the corpses as it popped into a purple light. He couldn't think much of it, however, as he had to catch up with Rhesus. At that very moment, the four demigods making their way through the tower all stopped when order stopped. As it turned out, she had placed a spell on one of the three soldiers she had ordered to stay behind, so that she could tell if someone was coming. And since being a demigod, she could tell that No Name was responsible. The other demigods could tell as well, with Desire desiring to get out of there ASAP, War wanting to go back and fight, and Technology crafting a plan in his head to defeat the demon. But before any of them could execute their plans, Order pointed at Technology and commanded him to go back and stop the duo since he was the weakest of the four. The other three demigods were far more useful in climbing the tower, and Order had made sure to take all of Technology's puzzle-solving gizmos before he left. Soon Rhesus and No Name encountered the first puzzle of the tower. The puzzle was a large gate with the inscription, "Present the wealth of a kingdom." Rhesus scoffed at the puzzle since it was easy. She took out the ring of combined jewels, placed it on a nearby plinth, and the gate opened. No Name asked how she knew the answer to the inscription, to which Rhesus responded by insulting the demon's intellect with her fancy royal education since, duh, the puzzle wouldn't have to be a real puzzle, just something to stop aspiring treasure hunters. Since, what's the point of making the effort to plunder a place if you have to pay more to get in than you get out? Once more No Name tried protesting the words that came out of her mouth, and once more she walked off. I'm sensing a bit of a pattern here. They continued through the maze making little progress as the tables turned, as No Name began spewing the insults and degrading comments, commenting on how if he was leading the two, they would be halfway up the tower by now, because instead of Rhesus getting lost every 2 minutes, since he, as the superior demigod, could just smash his way through the maze walls and beeline it to the stairs. Rhesus, not passing up the opportunity to one-up a demigod, dared No Name to go ahead and bust his way through. No Name told Rhesus to step back and he charged the wall head first. He bounced off and lay on the floor in a bruised mess. Stunned by the stupidity, Rhesus commented about how if No Name charged a little bit harder and a couple more times, he might actually be able to start chipping away at the wall before she dies of old age. In an attempt to regain his dignity, No Name tried insulting Rhesus back. But in stubborn silence, she took out the bag of infinite food and started dropping bread on the floor as she walked. No Name thought she was mad. Rhesus was just leaving a bread trail to keep track of where she had been. Don't worry, this Hansel and Gretel copying is relevant to the story. Since now Rhesus was able to keep track of where the two reluctant companions had been, they quickly made it to a large room flanked with pillars with stairs at the end leading to the next floor. No Name charged forth on impulse, happy to finally be getting somewhere, until he got stuck in the face with an arrow that made the pointer explode. Somewhat peeved at his denial of progress, he looked for the source of the arrow. Standing between the companions and the stairs was a stern-looking demigod of technology. Being the demigod of technology, he possessed what could only be called a crazy crossbow, that could do more than just firing crossbow bolts. Attached to the bottom of the crossbow was a tube that connected to a tank on Technology's back. Technology fired a bolt at No Name, who deflected the bolt. But this was only a distraction. Being too busy thwacking the bolt aside, No Name missed the oncoming spray of gunk from the tube at the bottom of the crossbow. No Name shook off as much of the gunk as he could and charged Technology to get a swing in with his sword. But as he ran, he got slower and slower and the gunk hardened. If you didn't get it yet, the gunk was glue. Our boy No Name got shot with Pritt Stick. Stuck frozen in place, No Name could do nothing but spout every curse word he knew. He shouted them at Technology and even Rhesus, who was only shouting back how useless he was. What kind of demigod gets stuck in place with what 3-year-olds burn through in minutes? Then, No Name stopped cursing in response to Rhesus's insults. He saw what she couldn't. Technology was aiming a bolt at her. She was too busy screaming at No Name to notice. No Name had to do something. And we hit the 7-minute mark. This animation takes time and I gotta draw the line somewhere. But, apart from that, will No Name break free from the glue? Will Rhesus stop shouting insults to survive the incoming bolt? Will our duo stop the 4 demigods before they destroy the world? Will Austrian fungi get bullied? Find out in the next episode of Gods of the Tower. Special thanks to Space Chicken for the drum kit, and I still don't know how to end a video, so have a Scottish lobster making friends.